Hi, I'm Holliday, and this is Chloroform and Chillz, but this is the audio version due to me having a few technical difficulties and also short on time. I want to always make sure I'm getting a video out, so this will be an audio only. And listen, I'm not gonna lie, I'm about to yap, and what I'm about to yap about is so crazy. Have y'all seen the HBO documentary, The Mortician? It's only 3 episodes and it's so good, y'all. It's so good, so creepy, and it just makes you think what's really going on in the funeral services in, the world of the United States, you know? This actually starts off in the 1980s. What It's a funeral home called the Land Funeral Home in the 1980s. Well, they started before then, but it's a family owned business, and they have a son, they not his son, but it's a family owned business, and this man's mother, uh Latrice Lawrence, I don't know how to say her name. She's not really, I mean, she's important, but right now to this, no, not that serious. Her son name is David Sconce, and he did some very questionable things to a lot of people who were deceased. Oh God, it starts off so crazy. So he has to figure out what he wants to do. David, I'm talking about David. He goes to college, he figure out what he wants to do, and he ends up being in mortician school at a college in Cali. And he's like, wow, you can really make some money in a funeral service. And lucky for him, his family owns a funeral home, right? Starts off kind of crazy already. And he is in charge of just the cremations. His mother and his father are for, like, the body services for a funeral. People came to the funeral home to have a service, but he did the cremations. And where it starts to get unethical is that he is charging $55 per cremation. That sounds suspicious, doesn't it? And you know why it sounds suspicious? Because he was cremating bodies. Oh, how can I say this? He was cremating bodies by the dozen. Actually, I'll go further. He was cremating at least 15 to 20, 25 bodies at one time. If y'all could see my face, just to even say that is ridiculous. He was cremating 15 to 20 to 30 bodies at once, and it didn't even take that long. It took a couple of hours, and it rocked off from there. Once he saw that he was making like crazy money, it started to really kind of go off from there. And David even says in the documentary that I'm talking about, The Mortician, he even says that he doesn't care for the dead after they are dead. Like, you're just a shell at that point, and he believes that people should care for you while you're here. So he's like, what doesn't matter if we do multiple cremations at once in one oven? And that's where things get a little unethical, because he would collect the bodies from individuals that have passed away. He would collect them in a box truck with no refrigeration. None. I'm actually going to put some pictures inside of this audio only. So please watch. He picks up bodies in a non refrigerated truck. He also would wrap the bodies in cardboard, not a body bag. And remember, they're in Los Angeles, so they had to work pretty fast with collecting bodies throughout the day because they would start to smell. And even from testimony, if you watch the documentary, the drivers even say once they arrived at the funeral home, people will rush out to get all the bodies out. and tried to get them in the refrigerator so then they could either be embalmed for a funeral or cremated. And a lot of people actually picked the Lamb family is because cremations were so cheap. But they didn't know what they were getting with picking the Lamb family funeral home to take care of their loved one's body. And a lot of people in the documentary who are family members that picked the Lamb family actually came out and spoke out and said, we don't even know if these ashes that we were given are our family members. And it's so crazy because they used to even have a cheat sheet. Like, say you got your family member cremated, the Lamb family, most likely David, had a cheat sheet for how many ashes go in each box. Say if you had a newborn baby and they unfortunately passed away, ounces of ashes would go into a box. Or say that you were a full-grown adult, a couple pounds would go into a box. Female, male, child, they all had their own weights to go in boxes. And what was very disturbing to me, actually all of it was disturbing, but something that he says, and also some of his workers also say, is that they would cremate bodies so much that they would sweep out the crematorium into metal trash cans. And at one point there were 9 metal trash cans filled to the brim with human ashes. Can y'all believe that? Can you believe that? 9 metal trash cans filled to the brim with human ashes. And to make this business go quickly and to get bodies into the crematorium, they would break limbs from people's loved ones' bodies to fit them into the crematorium to make this happen. Yes, they were breaking corpses, bodies, to make sure that all of them fit into the crematorium because they were cremating everybody by a mass cremation, which is disturbing at itself. And that wasn't the only thing he did. Supposedly David also would abuse the bodies. He would slap them, carry them around with no care, like under his arms. Like, it was very concerning. He would slap the bodies and be like, oh, what happened to you? Why are you doing that? Okay. And also what actually got me kind of disturbed is that he stated that family members would ask him to return the gold in their family members' teeth. And when I heard that, I was like, what do you mean by that? So what David was doing is he was pulling out people's teeth and then smashing it on the ground with a hammer and then collecting the gold out of the teeth. Because, back in the day, back in the 80s, they were giving gold fill-ins. He was stealing the gold and also the silver from people's teeth. And he was making around 30 to 50K just from stealing teeth and everything. Isn't that sick? Like, I believe you should always respect the dead. And for you not to be respecting these people is tremendously out of this world. Because what do you mean by that? What do you mean you were stealing the teeth? What do you mean you were stealing the gold from their teeth? What do you mean the family members asked for the gold back? I don't believe that. Like, what? And also when after the funerals would happen, because some families did do a funeral and then do cremation, he would take the loved one's jewelry and put it on hangers, and I believe he was selling the jewelry, and then probably telling the family members that the jewelry melted in the crematorium, like in the oven. It probably melted and they can't find it or they can't give it back. Like, what was going on there? And there was another alleged thing is that not even allege, they were stealing organs and corneas from people that were deceased. And family members didn't even know this was happening. And what happened is that the Lamb family would make a contract and you would sign it without reading it, which is unfortunate. You should always read a contract, whatever you're doing. And they put in the fine print of the contract that you allow them to donate or take organs from the family's bodies to either be sold or to be kept. But most likely they would be sold. And he was selling their corneas and organs to like universities, which actually is an old practice that's always been happening, just on like the black market, where colleges have been getting cadavers. Just to find that out, that this was happening in the 80s is not really too shocking, but that's ridiculous. And don't get it twisted, David didn't work alone. His mother, who is a Lamb, the Lamb family funeral home, right? She is the daughter of the man Charles F. Lamb. She was in on it. She was in on taking money from families and basically laundering the money and not being, I don't want to say responsible, more like they were stealing money from loved ones and not accounting for it when the IRS would come knocking on their door. And anytime they did come knocking on the door, she would act all innocent and act like she didn't do it and she didn't know what was going on. And it was like, lady, you know what you're doing. Because there were also rumors that she knew what was going on, because she would call the people that would go, I guess the coroners that would go pick up the bodies. She would call the family home, because this is back in the 80s. She called the family home and say, can I speak to my assistants? They would speak to the assistants and she would ask them, oh, are the eyes watery? And if they aren't, go to the van or the truck and go pick up this vial of liquid and put it into the eyes so we can take the corneas later. Yeah. You heard that. And like, to fast forward a little bit, the parents, like David's parents, they only end up getting 3 years for, I think, tax evasion or something. Nothing else. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that sick? Isn't that wild? And the reason is because they didn't really have any defined laws against defiling a body, abuse of a corpse, anything inhumane, or cremating dozens of bodies or mass cremation. They didn't have any laws against that. And after this case comes out, that's when they start to create felonies for how to properly take care of a loved one's body. Yeah. Supposedly, and I know I'm jumping ahead, a family member was so traumatized by what the Lamb family did, the Lamb funeral home family did, that when their mother died, they got her cremated, but they stayed there for the whole cremation. They opened the box to make sure it was their mother. They made sure that the oven of the crematorium was empty and that she was only inside of it. That's how bad the trauma, the sadness, the abuse that was done on these bodies, where people were so traumatized they had to make sure that their family members were actually being cremated by themselves at this point. It was ridiculous. And also, when it came to cremating these bodies, David didn't do it alone. He didn't, because that would have been exhausting, right? He had help. He had helpers who were ex-gang members and I'll say drug addicts, but in this particular moment in the 80s, it was crack. And they how can I say this? So what happened is, he had drug addicts cremating bodies, obviously in mass production. And one day they tried to speed up the process and they wanted to go get high. So they shoved a bunch of bodies into the crematorium and they left to go smoke crack. Yes, you heard that right. So what do you think happened after they left to go smoke crack? The crematorium ended up burning down. It ended up catching on fire, burning down. And when you see that, you're like, oh yeah, this is when the Lamb family, David, is going, like, they're all going to get caught. They're all going to get caught. And they don't get caught. What happens is David ends up buying a facility out in the desert. This is crazy. He ends up buying a facility out in the desert. And he just moves his operations out in the desert. And even though the crematorium was burnt down, he was still collecting bodies the same day that the crematorium burnt down. So the facility he brought in the desert, he had a couple ovens in there. And at this point, he was burning about 150 to 200 bodies at one time. And where he brought his facility at, there were neighbors or other buildings, other businesses around. And one guy who I believe survived the Holocaust, I believe he survived the Holocaust. He smelled what David and his crew were doing over there. And he was told by David that, oh, we just make leather shoes and belts. And the guy was like, he didn't tell David at the time, but in his mind, he was like, no, I know what bodies smell like due to me, like, being in the Holocaust and me knowing exactly what that smell is. So he ends up reporting it to the sheriff. The sheriff comes out and says, hey, we want to, we would like to see what's going on in this facility. They say, no, you can't without a warrant. So then the EPA gets involved. The EPA gets involved and sees that there's a bunch of waste coming out the back of the building and they don't know what it is. So then they get other law enforcement involved and then they're able to get a warrant and they search the building and it's covered in ashes, human ashes. And the back of the building is leaking out human waste. And what I mean by human waste, I mean the fat from a body. Yes, they weren't cleaning up properly, I guess you can say, and they weren't being ethical. And one thing that David says during this whole interview process is that, like, yeah, if I could, I would do it again. I would just make sure that I was legal about it. And the producer actually asked him, what do you mean by legal? He was like, yeah, I would just have all the paperwork done, but I would, he was like, so you're telling me that you would still do mass cremations? He was like, yes. He was like, I'm not the only one doing it either, by the way. And then they show a bunch of places in the U.S., like Virginia, down south, like Tennessee, Alabama, Pennsylvania, everywhere where they're doing or they have gotten caught of doing mass cremations, and people just didn't know. People just didn't know. And listen, I will say, if you think in your right mind that a cremation show is only $55, you should know something nefarious is going on. Because I paid for my aunt to be cremated and like her funeral service and everything. That was $2,500. And her funeral service was at a funeral home due to COVID. And that was $2,500, not including the urn. Brought the urn later. And that was $100. And you're telling me you want me to believe that you think cremation is literally $55. I know this is back in 1980s, but I would think that it was at least more than just $55 for a cremation. Why would you ever think that you could cremate somebody for $55 and not think something else was going on? So after David and his family is arrested on fraud charges, it took a long time for the the government or law enforcement to really charge them, because at this time they didn't really have anything to really, how can I say this? They didn't really have anything to charge them with. So it took a really long time for them to charge them. And once they found out they were money laundering people's money from their family, that's when they were able to charge all of them with fraud. And then it just went off from that. It was, oh God. So as I said, the parents only got 3 years and David got 5. And also, while David was in prison, they accused him of killing somebody because he tried to kill one of his competitors. Allegedly, even though he was acquitted, so technically he didn't do it. But at the time, allegedly, he was being charged with murder of a man named Tim, because the man Tim started to wonder, how are you getting all this business? Like, how are you able to cremate all these people so quickly, like that, like snap, like going fast? Like, he was like, how are you able to do that? And the rumor from the rumor mill is that one day David took Tim out to dinner, and that night Tim was dead. And they say of a heart attack. Of a heart attack. You want me to believe it was a heart attack? I don't think it was of a heart attack. Do you want me to tell you what he used? Most likely cyanide. And I think they actually even touch on him having cyanide or cyanide being used to cause a heart attack in Tim. Even though they do say that Tim was a heavyset man and he just, it was just his time to die. I don't know about that one. And I say I don't know about that one because months beforehand, David got his drivers that were picking up the bodies to beat up Tim, because Tim was starting to cause some commotion with people starting to look at, yeah, why are the cremations only $55? How are you able to cremate somebody so quickly? Why is it that I can come and pick up my loved one's ashes tomorrow? How is that possible? That does seem odd. So that is something. But he was acquitted. He told them to dig up Tim's body, test his body, all his fluids and everything, test his body, test his skin, and you'll see that I didn't poison him. They figured that David took Tim out to dinner and poisoned him, and it came back that he didn't. It came back they couldn't find anything in his test results, but they are still believing that David killed Tim. They also believe that David also killed somebody that was a worker for him, because he saw that they were doing mass cremations, and at the time it was supposed to be on hush, and they believe that he killed him and cremated his body with other individuals as well. Yeah. And so supposedly, I know I didn't even touch on this. Let me tell you how David has a wife. During all this, he has a wife, and she is one of those wives that be like, I didn't know he was doing anything. I didn't know. I didn't know. Even though his father asked me before I married him, do I really want to marry him, 3 times on my wedding day, I didn't know that David was doing mass cremations on people's loved ones. I didn't know, but we did have a nice house. We had a boat. We had jet skis. We had such nice things. I just really didn't know that's where the money was coming from. And she was like, one day I did see him bring in a cup of teeth that had the gold symbol on it from the periodic table. And when I heard her say that, I was like, girl, get a hold of yourself. You think you want me to believe that you didn't know what your husband was doing? She even states that she went to the crematorium at least 3 times and she realized the crematorium wasn't a place she ever wanted to be, because you knew what he was doing. You knew what he was doing, ma'am. And it's crazy because you and David end up having like 2 kids. And at the end of this whole documentary, David's like, yeah, I lost my whole family. I lost everybody. None of my kids want to speak to me. Not even my like ex-wife. Oh, I divorced my ex-wife because she got a boyfriend while I was in prison. And I feel like I just can't trust her. Boy, nobody can trust you with a body. You worried about the wrong shit right now. Nobody can trust you with their loved one's body. Many people in this documentary showed the ashes that they were given of their loved ones, and they didn't even know if it was their loved ones. Nothing. They didn't even know. This was a crazy one. And you know what? Again, I am only giving you the cliff notes of what like happened and what's going on. I really do advise all of you to go and watch the documentary. It's on Max. It's only 3 episodes. So I mean about 3 hours, but it's so worth it because it makes you really open your eyes into what's really going on. After I saw this, it made me wonder, is my aunt really my aunt that's in her urn? Like, is that really what's going on? Because I know nobody in my family was there for like to stand and look at her be cremated. Was that really her? We didn't say if we wanted to donate any of her organs or anything. You know, like, was that her? Like, it makes you really think like, oh my God, what's going on? I think one of my friends passed away and he was cremated. Did they do a did they do a mass, like, you know, cremation there too? Like, how many other funeral homes are still doing this to this day? Just because he was called doesn't mean that they're not still not doing it. And that is what has my brain going. I told my sister this story and she decided that she did not want to be cremated anymore. She was like, put me in a box in the ground. She was like, to not have that peace of knowing that you are getting your own cremation is wild. Because did y'all know that they cremate animals? And mass cremation is not one by one. And it makes me wonder, did he get that idea from them cremating animals in mass? You know? Like, oh my God. That's crazy to think about. But I hope you guys like this little yap sesh of me going off on this documentary called The Mortician on HBO. Well, actually, sorry, on Max. So please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Please, if you've seen it, hit me with an email, put it in the comments, saying something. Just think about it. Mass cremation. 150 to 200 bodies at one time. And you not even knowing if that's your loved one in the box. That's disturbing. Also, somebody stealing their teeth for gold. That's disturbing. Putting them in cardboard, that is disturbing. I can't even say anything. So like, please tell me your thoughts. If you watched it, please tell me your thoughts, your opinions, your feelings about this. Let me know. I'm really interested in having an open discussion about the Mortician because I've seen the news lately and I have also seen that there are other like funeral homes starting to get cracked down where they're just leaving bodies in the heat inside of a building. Like, oh my God, maybe I'll do another like funeral home with visuals, but yes, please again, let me know. I hope you guys have a good day. Please stay safe. And I will see you guys later. Bye.